In 1789, a crisis is brewing in France. After decades of growing anger with the government, a revolution erupts, culminating in the overthrow of the monarchy and the establishment of a republic. Europe is thrown into chaos once again. But one man uses this chaos as a ladder, Napoleon Bonaparte, who rises to power in the aftermath of the revolution.
What needs to be known as Napoleon Bonaparte, just like Adolf Hitler, were funded by the Rothschild banking dynasty to create war, to create chaos, so that way they could later take control of their financial institution. Germany is a little different because at that point, the Rothschild had already established a central banking system, and they controlled all of the coin in Germany before they funded Hitler's rise. It's the same scenario. He may have been Christian, but he's of their bloodline. He's from a Jewish background. Same scenario. But during
He
World War
immediately
II,
seized the
when
advantage
Hitler
of controlling the
rose to power,
papacy.
one of the first things he did was
By 1798, French forces have invaded Rome itself, proclaiming a Roman republic and effectively ending papal rule over the city. Pope Pius VI dies on August 29, 1799, in Valence, France, still in French captivity.
They're British, they're the monarchy, they're Israel. They are
The fall of the Vatican and the subsequent death of Pope Pius VI nearly bring the Roman Catholic Church to an end.
So you don't know who's who.
In the 18th
And really, it's just the same family. They took the story of Noah, where he sent his sons out to different directions of the globe, so that way they could supposedly repopulate the earth. Really, the earth was populated already with indigenous. It was really the Rothschild family that sent their sons to each continent, and they already had weapons of war, where it started, and they conquered all the territories around them, and they used the territories they already conquered to do the same in other places. It's just replete. They just keep repeating the same cycles over and over. Even the method of taking somebody who's Christian so they can blame it on Christians, so that way you can't blame it on Jews. Well, you shouldn't blame it on Jews anyway. You have to blame it on the bankers. They're just bouncing around behind identities, so you don't know who they are. They're skirting natural law. They found a way to get around natural law. If you don't know who your enemy is, you can't take retribution against them, and that's how it works. So after the Rothschilds had sent their people to organize Germania into Germany, into a country, and then divided into states, they installed their religion, moving Judaism into a place where traditionally they had polytheistic religion. And then they implemented the banking system. And as they were building commerce, trading furs and trading whatever, things of value, they created commerce in Germany. They funded all of the residents of Germany to build this commerce, to build their storefronts, to build their businesses. And then once after the infrastructure was built, the businesses were put into place. They had given loans to all these people. They knew who they were. They knew where to find them, their address, everything, all their information and their banking information. And they sent Hitler to house and collected them, rounded them up, put them in concentration camps, and expropriated all of their businesses, handing them over to the Sephardic Jews that physically resided within Great Britain. So this is what you're talking about. It's feudalism. It's just disguised. You see what I'm saying? They put them in business to get commerce jump started, and then they put them all in prison and took their businesses from them. Because at the end of World War II, all of the Ashkenazi Jewish-owned business were in place prior to World War II. At the end of World War II, British, Jewish, monarchy, Freemasons, there were all these identities. They controlled it, and then Israel is established. So now Britain and Israel are pretty much equivalent to one another. Both of them are bases of operations for this banking dynasty. At the end of World War II, were owned by the Sephardic Jews.
1830s, after the upheaval of the Napoleonic Wars and the Congress of Vienna in 1815, the Papal States are restored to papal control. But the Vatican is in a dire financial situation. Desperate for enough funding to remain operational, the Church reaches out to an unlikely financier, the Rothschilds.
He says that as if they weren't already under the Rothschild control. I mean, they were obviously, because prior to the Rothschild banking dynasty taking control of Rome, as they conquered them one territory at a time, until they finally took Rome, and they didn't remove Constantine. Emperor Constantine stayed in place, but that's when the Pope arrived. When you see the Pope arrive and he's wearing a yarmulke, when he wears a yarmulke, he's doing the business of the chief rabbinate in Jerusalem. He's acting as their agent or liaison, and so that's why he wears a yarmulke. They had control of him the entire time. So this story is being told in a manner to make it sound like they didn't have control prior, when all of the Catholic Church, any of the wars that they were involved in when it came to the Crusades, was all done under the direction or the control under the same Rothschild. They went by the name Bauer. Their name was not Rothschild initially. That itself is a cover. They changed their name before they created the banking dynasty. So it's all under their control, each and every country.
In the 1830s, the Rothschild banking dynasty established itself as a key player in international finance. By stationing its members across key European cities, Frankfurt, London, Paris, Vienna, and Naples, the Rothschilds were extensively involved in government finance, issuing bonds and lending money to states, especially during times of distress when higher interest rates could be charged.
Yeah, but they also created the wars and created the distress to create a situation where they could charge higher interest rates. These assassinations were done at their hand or by one of their agents intentionally to create war, to create conditions where they could charge higher interest rates, or say they can take control of another territory to dominate their banking and financial systems, one step at a time.
And at the time, there is one powerful entity in Europe in such financial distress. In 1831, Gregory XVI became Pope. He knows the Vatican might not survive long unless there is an immediate cash infusion. For the first time in the Church's history, the Vatican decides to borrow money from the most prominent Jewish banker. James de Rothschild, head of the family's Paris-based headquarters, becomes the official papal banker. One of his brothers, Karl, who runs the family's Naples branch, begins traveling to Rome to consult with the Pope.
Their financial empire prompted a mixture of envy and resentment among church officials. Most traditionalists, who referred to James as the leader of international Jewry, were appalled that the church had resorted to Christ killers for financial succor.
I'm sorry, but all monotheistic religions, all Abrahamic religions came from the Torah. They came from Judaism. Christianity was born of Judaism. Islam, the Quran, was born of Judaism. There was only one monotheistic religion that spurred into two more. So there was a total of three, the Holy Trinity. Now, when they say the Holy Trinity, it's referring to Jesus, God, the Holy Ghost. They're not talking, they state it in a separate, because it's replete. They'll use the same exact verbiage and be referring to multiple different things, so that way you don't know what they're talking about. It's a word game with linguistics. But initially, all of it, Christ killers. Well, they're also Christ creators, because the Council of Nicaea, under their direction, created not created Jesus. Obviously, he was born of his parents, but the myth behind him to exalt him to a certain height was all done under their direction as well. So, religion, all religions, and the Masonic order was created by Judaism, by the sons of Esau that are referenced in the Bible. If you're a Christian and you know the Bible verbiage, read John chapter 8, verse 44, because it references the sons of Esau. These are the people who are in control of the world now.
French poet Alfred de Vigny wrote that a Jew now reigns over the Pope and Christianity. He pays monarchs and buys nations.
The Rothschilds lend the Vatican 40 million euros in today's money. It becomes a lifeline that the Church desperately needs. The unlikely alliance is forged, And with the Rothschilds' influence, the church begins a series of financial reforms, which mean more ways for the church to accumulate assets.
Historically, the Vatican collected money through what is called Peter's Pence. It dates back to at least the 8th century and has its roots in England, where Anglo-Saxon kings collected annual tax for the land to support the Pope.
This donation, known traditionally as Romascot, was collected on the feast of Saints Peter and Paul and was sent to the Pope as a gesture of solidarity and support for the papacy.
But for the Catholic Church at the time, that income source alone is not sufficient, and they soon begin to sell bonds to the Catholic faithful. These bonds are essentially financial instruments that individuals can purchase, thereby loaning money to the Vatican with the promise of repayment, often with interest.
This method allowed the Vatican to raise the necessary funds while engaging the faithful directly in supporting the papal mission.
But the Vatican doesn't stop there. As the capital market system is being adopted across Europe, the Vatican Bank, with vast amounts of gold, needs to diversify into other assets and grow its wealth. And the Vatican begins investing in real estate across Rome, buying up properties and renting them out to generate income. But the church also realizes the potential of stocks and begins investing heavily in the stocks of the Bank of Rome, hoping to grow the wealth of the church. The investment in the Bank of Rome has been a profitable one. Within years of investing in the bank's stocks, it has created huge profits for the church. As the Vatican emerges onto the financial market as a major player, many companies and even countries begin to view the Vatican as a partner to do business with. One of them is Germany. After the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary by a Serbian nationalist, Europe is once again thrown into war on a scale unprecedented in world history.
And who do you think paid for the bullet in that assassination that threw them into war? I love how this dude just skims over the important details.
As the war escalates, Pope Benedict XV, who assumed the papacy in 1914, finds himself navigating a treacherous path between the warring nations.
The war has caused a lot of financial strain on the church. Remember, the church's major income comes from donations from various countries. During wartime, people simply don't have the money or the time to donate.
But Germany sees the importance of having the Vatican as an ally. Germany also knows that it can't just give money to the Vatican outright.
Germany was covertly funneling cash to the church through Swiss banks and labeling it Peter's Pence. That helped stabilize the church's finances.
Now he tells you that Germany's funneling money to the Vatican, but he's not stating that the German banking institution is owned by the Rothschilds. So again, they're sending money to the Vatican.
The German Foreign Ministry separately sent the Vatican cash from a propaganda slush fund, and the Austrians joined with a clandestine subsidy to Benedict.
And it soon becomes clear that the Vatican is an ideal party for covert money operations.
Now listen to this next part, because they did exactly the same thing when it came to Adolf Hitler. They found somebody who was of their bloodline who was Christian and not Jewish, so that way it didn't look like Jews were killing Jews, but that's exactly what they did.
The Vatican realizes that it needs a professional to manage its growing financial empire. And soon, they find the perfect man for the job. Bernardino Nogara grew up in a middle-class farming family with Jewish lineage near Lake Como. But Nogara was a devout Catholic who graduated with honors in industrial and electrical engineering from Politecnico di Milano. Starting in the mining industry, Nogara quickly develops a reputation for his financial acumen, especially his ability to manage risk.
It's amazing to me that they got away with it as long as they did without somebody finally putting the pieces together. They control all of these parties. They control all the players. They're all pieces or pawns for the same king and queen. It's feudalism, but hidden behind capitalism, republics, democracies, all these other identities, social identities.
His career propels him to become the Italian delegate to the Ottoman Public Debt Council and to participate in the Versailles Peace Conference after World War I. But for Nogara, a bigger opportunity awaits.
After a masterly speech by Premier Mussolini, the Senate this evening, by 315 votes to 6, approved the Lateran treaties affecting the pacification of the church and state in Italy amidst stirring scenes of enthusiasm.
In 1929, the country of Italy and the Vatican reached a landmark agreement. Known as the Lateran Pax, it creates Vatican City as its own country, allowing the Pope to rule it. As part of the agreement, the government of Italy pays the Holy See 750 million Italian lira in cash and 1 billion lira in government bonds. With this sudden increase in capital, the Vatican needs a man capable enough to manage it.
Nogara was very well connected, even though there were some whispers about the family's Jewish background.
What gets even more interesting is I don't believe that Henry Ford, his real name was Henry Ford. He wasn't the first Henry Ford. If you look back at the foundation of the colonists in American history, there was another Henry Ford prior to him. And if you look at every single country, every continent that manufactures automobiles, the Model T Ford was built in every country, in Russia and Germany, every country. That's how they kick-started production in every country. World War II was nothing more than an expansion of U.S. industrialism, or pardon me, an expansion because the U.S. didn't control anything either. They were being controlled through Freemasonry by Great Britain still. So I guess be the British industrialism. It was an expansion of industrialism from rubber to steel to glass to everything that we produce. And all of it was done so they can expand to all these countries. The same Model T Ford that ran off the assembly line in Dearborn came off the assembly line in Russia, Germany, Japan, all these different countries. You look back at the origins of every auto manufacturer, find out what the first auto manufacturer was for that continent, and then go back and research the history on each one of them, and you'll find the same thing I did.
He seemed like a very faithful Catholic and had a really strong financial expertise. So Pope Pius chose him to handle the significant funds that came from the Lateran Pacts.